Please allow. Michael, you need to turn the camera. People, you can turn these off later. Yeah, man. Let's allow this. Let's allow this. Oh, it's not even telling me how to allow it. Oh my Lord. Not gonna do either of those things. Here he is. I think Thomas Street might be.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Talking wild madness.
Is there any other kind, Tom?
I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't.
I know that there's wild mushrooms, and I know that there's wild animals, and I'm pretty sure there are wild women, but I don't know how many people are talking wild madness.
Yeah, well, we've got a few people tuning in, lending their ears.
We do have,
minds.
yeah, their ears and their minds. That is that's probably one of the heaviest things that you can lend another person. And like back in the old days, obviously not so much now when you can just go to a mortgage broker online, but back in the old days when is that a bird on that cup?
Yes.
Excellent.
Got some birds on my cup from the tea that I'm drinking, ladies and gentlemen.
I got some birds on my cup from the tea that I'm drinking. Birds on my cup from the tea that I'm drinking. We'll get back to that later. If you went into a bank, say in the mid '80s, late '70s, and you said to them, "I'm here to borrow some money," and then the bank manager, he would say, "You want me to lend you money?" And then you would say, "Yes, please." And then he would say, "Well, at least I don't have to lend you my mind." So I think for the people who are listening, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful because that's a heavy ask. That's a heavy thing to for people to lend their attention and their time and their minds. I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, thanks, people. Thanks for the trust and for the time. Yeah,
Precious commodity.
it is. Yeah, it's our most precious. Probably our most precious commodity. Or maybe the children. Maybe the children are the most precious commodity. But the time's certainly up there.
No, I think time is because it has it's one of the few things in life that you have no idea how much you actually have.
Yeah.
Like this might be this might be one of our last evenings on Earth.
I hope not.
No, of course. Hopefully, you hope not. But I mean, and as we enjoy an audience of hundreds of thousands of people, someone is dying tonight. Statistically, someone is on that low swinging chariot and going yonder.
Yeah, go well, my friend.
Go well, my friend, into that great blue black sky. Yes, but Tom,
I'll be joining you
exactly.
one day.
Yeah, well, it might be today or it might be tomorrow. And I certainly don't mean to start like it's not a negative sense, but it's just this
idea. Morbid, isn't it?
Well, is it morbid? Is it morbid?
Well, I think we don't as a species. I don't think we can. We can't dwell on death too much. We can certainly acknowledge it and and deal with the fact that we're going to die. But I think that it's just not humanly possible to live in a state where you're constantly aware of your own impending death.
Isn't it fascinating though that like this universe, whatever it actually is, whatever this reality actually is that one of the conditions or one of the one of the things that are in place is that you don't actually know how long you're going to be here. Like that, if you were playing a video game, that would be there'd be a cheat code on the internet that you could turn that off to make the game a bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd know, 2034, May 10th. That's all I've got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this idea that, like, it's like someone literally said, oh, this world is amazing. This is so brilliant. Do they all know when they're going to go? Oh, yeah, they do. Oh, why don't we make it so they don't know? Oh, that's amazing. I wonder how that would change the gameplay within the game. I wonder how that would change people's behaviors. And
knowledge, isn't it?
It's what?
Knowledge.
It's
knowledge. It's because we've got the knowledge because neither of us have experienced death for ourselves, but maybe little deaths.
As far as we know.
In our life.
Well, as far as we know, though.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like it's how can one speak about death having not died?
Unless we have.
Having the knowledge. Unless we have, yeah. But we haven't because we're alive.
Yeah, we're alive now. Yeah. But maybe we were alive before and we died before.
Now is a pretty great space. Like there's quite a lot of space now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of space, Tom. I'm not debating that there's any space. I don't think. Yeah, absolutely.
There's room to breathe.
Well, is there? Is there room to breathe?
Certainly.
Like I would like the ability to travel through all that space and the ability to breathe in the different vectors of that space. Is vectors the right word? I felt like I just slipped into a bit of science, and I'm not.
I think it's great. Yeah, I like the scientific terminology.
Vector, is that the right phrase for that sentence?
I knew what you were talking about. I guess everybody else did too. That's all.
Okay. Well,
I kind of had a little moment just before as well where I said maybe children are our most valuable commodities, and then I thought like, well, that sort of commodity. They're not really commodities, are they? But I use that word. That's going to happen though when you're talking like words are, because it's a limited grid, isn't it? The language is just like there's different ways of going about planning out a city. Like you can make it a grid pattern, or you can make it with cul-de-sacs, and you can make it with big parks or with long streets. A lot of different ways of, and that's language is like that too. Like it just depends on how you want to go about it, I guess.
Well, as someone I'm talking about you who speaks a couple of languages, what is the difference, say, between the German language and the English language with regard to the grid and the narrow highways and the space and the...
I think the best way that I can describe it is that I've been watching a Scottish a comedy series about it. It's called Gary Tank Commander. It's called it, and Gary is a tank commander. He's got 3 people under his command, and it's mainly set in Scotland. Although they do go to Afghanistan, I think. It's a little bit of an older series, and there's there's a episode where an American general comes over to Scotland, and he's got some Scottish heritage, and he wants to get in touch with his roots a bit. And Gary, the tank commander, says, "I don't ken anybody by that name." He says, which means I don't know anybody by that name. And the American general says, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he says, "I don't ken him." And that means I don't really know him, kind of thing. And over here in Germany, they have that word too, kennen. It means the same thing. It means know. And so I was able to make that connection. I was like, "Oh, that's very similar." And because German and English have the same roots, and so obviously the Scottish people just held on to that word, and the English people let it go or started using different terminology. So that's you can see sort of the ties. They're very similar, really similar and a little bit different. Probably as similar to each other as they are in geographic location. I'd imagine England and Germany, they're not that far apart, really. Like I could probably walk. I couldn't walk to England. I could walk to the edge of the Channel, I would say, from where I am at the moment in Germany, in maybe a month or something like that.
You'd have a bit of trouble at the Channel, though, huh?
And the Channel would be, that would pose. But people have swum the Channel, so it's not impossibly.
Are you allowed? Is there a walkway in that tunnel under the sea?
No, I don't. Not that I'm aware of. I don't think. I've been on the train through there. Pretty sure there's no walkway, but it goes by pretty quick when you're on the train. Like you're on one side of you're on sort of the European continent, and then the next thing you know, you're in England. Like it's not a huge gap. It's not the Atlantic Ocean, or it's not the Pacific Ocean, not by any means.
It's just a channel.
And you can see that from the way that it's just a channel, yeah.
Like a
TV.
TV.
I guess a bit like our
TV channel.
Like or a podcast channel.
So the birds on the bird. Oh, sorry, Tom. Are you going?
Oh, I looked up vector in the meantime.
Oh, when did you do that? How did you do that?
A quantity having direction as well as magnitude.
All right, hang on. Wait, let me just stop you halfway there, Tom, because I know you can't see me because I haven't got my camera fixed, but I've been watching you the whole time, and you haven't moved.
Maybe it's frozen.
No, it didn't freeze. How did you look up vector? Like, okay, let me say this. If I was, say, a prison guard and I was watching you on Suicide Watch, you could have killed yourself, and I'd be like, "Oh no, Tom's good. Tom's right here."
There's a prominent story about that
There's
at
what?
the moment, isn't there? There's a prominent story about that at the moment.
Is there?
The fella the pedophile that died.
The pedophile that died?
In prison. Yeah, there was recently a high-profile pedophile, and he was captured. He was taken to prison.
A high-profile pedophile. That's got to be the worst high-profile. Like, if you're chasing any kind of fame, you don't want to be in that business. You do not want to be in that business.
Certainly not. No.
It's like, hey, Gary, Mr. Townsend. I won't make a mockery of men's lives, but yeah, the last thing you want is to be a high-profile pedophile. Even at the very least, even if you were to get away with it, it would make being a pedophile harder.
Yeah,
being a high-profile pedophile.
There's no grace there. There's no grace in that. It's a graceless state.
What's a graceless state?
to be a pedophile or to be involved in that sort of racket, I guess.
In that racket. Now, Tom, can you explain what when you say grace and graceless, what does that mean?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's how. Yeah, I guess everybody's probably um, decides what that means for themselves. And for me, um, grace, I think it's just when you feel like you can be who you are, and you feel like it's essentially a good thing. I think along those lines, like that's when I feel like graceful, and I guess also when you understand how when other people in your environment um, feel the same or have the same sort of have that sort of common ground. I think that's probably as well as I can put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we get maybe the vector? Maybe should we go back to?
Oh
vector?
yeah, sorry, please. I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes.
No, I mean we're talking wild madness, so we've got to have it.
Yeah,
it's got to go.
My great fantasy about this podcast is that it garners enough of an audience that there's like a crazy there's like a mad old Romanian man living in he's now in Yonkers in New York, and he's listening to this podcast, and he's been listening for like 3 years, and then finally his patience snaps, and then he gets on his computer, and maybe he creates an email address just for this purpose, and he angrily types in this madness is not wild enough, and then he hits send, and then he probably takes a shirt off, and he's got just like a undershirt, like a tank top undershirt on, and then he opens a big jug of wine, and he has his first cigarette in 20 years because he was dying of cancer, and he just feels free because it's like this. I signed on for wild madness, and this is not wild enough, and I've had enough, and these two fellas need to know. That's my fantasy.
And yeah, we'd have to get him on the show at that point, I think.
We'd have to put him on the payroll, definitely. He'd have to take a slice of the Patreon numbers for sure. And his name would be I just watched The Devil Next Door, Jean Jajemniuk. So his name would have to be something like a Ukrainian name. Zabit.
Well, I'm sure he's out there. It's just a matter of reaching him, isn't it? But...
Oh yeah, he's probably listening. He's listening quietly right now, and he might not even be old right now. Like this might take 30 years for him to age, to get angry.
Yeah.
So he might be. Yeah, he could be like
mature, like a good wine.
Yeah, like an angry wine. He's gonna mature like an angry wine.
As we're speaking, he's getting slowly. Maybe he's still just a young man at this point, and he's not really that, riled up about things.
No, he's still enjoying the content. And he's thinking about it. He's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I mean, this wild madness is sufficiently wild and mad, but I think it might test his patience in 2050.
Well, let's hope so.
And
Vector.
Oh, sorry, vector. Yes.
A quantity having direction as well as magnitude. Well, that's interesting because that's sort of so direction and magnitude, especially as determining the position of the point in space relative to another. Well, because we're talking a little bit about maybe do you think Edward?
Edward? What?
Edward McComish, maybe. That might be the fella out there.
Oh, in the Ukraine.
Do you think that's a bit Ukrainian? It's not Ukrainian sounding enough. Maybe it is. McComish.
McComish.
Is that, or is that, where is that from, do you think, that name?
Oh,
It sounds a bit Czech.
Sounds a bit Czech and a bit Scottish.
Because of the muck, doesn't it? Maybe a Scottish man wed a Czechian bride back in
Czechian bride.
1830.
He was a great chess player. That Scottish guy that went to find a Czechian bride.
Yeah, he wasn't playing checkers anymore.
And at the altar, he said, "Checkmate." All right, that was a terrible joke. I'd like to apologize for that joke. No, I would. I would like to formally apologize in 3 languages for that joke. Now I only know 1 language, so I'll just apologize in English.
I make no apologies. I think.
Oh, I love that, Tom. That's even better. That's what Zabit McComish would say in Ukraine. In 2050, I make no apologies for this letter. This madness is not wild enough. Fuck you guys. Fuck you guys. I've been listening for 30 years. I've grown old with your channel.
Maybe we should just put that name into Facebook and see.
Zabit McComish.
yeah. If there's one, we just hit him up and say, look, Zab, we're hoping that you'll listen to the podcast. If you don't do it for 30 years, that's also like within our frame of reference. It's okay.
That might send him over the edge.
The second thing about vector, an organism, typically a biting insect or tick that transmits a disease or parasite from one animal or plant to another.
That's a vector?
Then apparently so, yeah.
Or is that Zabit McComish?
Two hurricanes were vectored towards the Stukas.
The Stukas?
Direct an aircraft in flight to a desired point. That's using the vectors in as a verb.
Vectors as a verb.
Vector is a bit like Victor, isn't it?
Victor. Yeah, it's identical.
Victor is Victor.
Victor
probably wins a lot. Victor is
what?
Like victory.
Yeah, no, okay. I tell you, okay, do you want to hear something absolutely bonkers?
Absolutely.
Okay, now I mean absolutely bonkers.
I'd be bonkers if I didn't.
You'd be bonkers if you didn't want to hear this. When I was 5. Now, a lot of great stories start with that sentence. When I was 5, I heard that Charles Dickens was going to start Tale of Two Cities with When I Was 5. He didn't. His loss. When I was 5.
Right, what did he start it with?
I think he started it with it was the best of times and it was the worst of times.
That's also not bad, though. I think
that's not bad either. But if he had started with When I Was 5, it would have just elevated it a little bit. Heaven forbid I'm here talking about Charles Dickens, about how he could improve his writing. I mean, that's wild madness, Tom. I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to go into that vector at all in any way, shape, or form. But when I was 5, I had a hat and a coat stand in my bedroom. Now, when I was 5, I didn't own a hat or a coat, really. But I had this hat and a coat stand, and on the top of the okay, let me try and I don't even know how to describe this. It had a stand at the bottom, which was obviously on the floor, and it was all made out of wool and felt. And it had a pole that ran up above my 5-year-old head, and it had 4 arms that were also covered with felt and wool. And at the end of the 4 arms, there was like a big saucer that was made of felt as well. And then at the top of the pole, above the 4 arms that came out, there was a dog's head. And the dog's head had long, droopy ears, and the dog was wearing a baseball cap.
Okay.
So if you looked at it without any hats or coats, it looked bizarre. If you had the coat and hat stand covered with coats and hats, it looked like a tall private detective who was a dog was in your bedroom. And that hat and coat stand was called Victor.
Oh,
And
was that the name of the? Like, was that the name somebody had given to it, or was it the maker's name?
that's the name that we gave it.
Yeah.
I haven't remembered that. That's the first time I've remembered that in maybe 32 years.
Yeah.
I have to say,
It's an obscure memory.
I'm relishing the memory though. I'm bathing in it.
Yeah.
In it. I'm really happy that I had a hat and coat stand called Victor, that was a dog's head with a baseball cap. I'm actually happy about that. And you know who else would be happy with that?
Maybe Dickens would probably be happy with
No,
that.
Zabit McComish would be happy. He'd be happy with that. He'd he'd be like, "This is acceptable wild madness. I enjoyed this madness." But he'd be such a stoic Eastern European Ukrainian that he'd only write in when he wasn't happy. So he wouldn't write in to say this is good. He would just write it. So I think what we're saying is the podcast in 30 years will finally deteriorate. But right now,
Yeah.
Zabit's got his ear to the speaker.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always nice to have something to hang your hat on.
exactly. And if that's a dog with a baseball cap, even better. Even better.
Yeah, I guess because it's what we were talking about last week, a bit about people in New York City and like what year the flash photography people.
It was
we were
like
talking last week about
it was like
there was a
19
photographer in the early.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
What? Yeah, what year do you think it was?
I think it was like 1905. Like it was early. Because they were
early, like when cameras had just been invented. There was a fella going around taking flash photography of surprising people in the dark, and all these people were wearing hats. That's something that we were talking about last week, and how important hats were to people that maybe at different times in human history. And I guess when you sort of, if you have your hat stand by the door, you come in the door and you take your hat off and hang it there, and it's waiting there ready for the next adventure.
Yeah, it's a really nice ritual. Unless you're in a Joe Cocker song, then you have to leave your hat on. And I have to say, Tom, having sex with another person who's told you to leave your hat on, I don't know. I'm just not. I'm not sure about that. I think there's an imposition there And I think, I mean, obviously there'd have to be a lot of trust, and there'd have to be, I don't know, because I've had sex with people with hats on, and it's wonderful. But I never at any point said leave your hat on,
Right.
because I think
Yeah.
that would get menacing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm planning to watch a new movie that's out at the moment called The Joker.
Oh yes, I want to watch that movie as well. Hey, do you reckon
Yeah.
we could have a Joker podcast?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we can. Yeah. 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 It'd be interesting to talk about. The only thing is though, with that is it probably alienates a bit of some of the audience because it's sort of either you've seen it or you haven't, and the people that haven't seen it won't understand what we're talking about. The people that have seen it will. Also, the people that haven't seen it, uh, even though it might spoil it a bit for them.
I think it's been long enough.
To yeah,
Like it's been out
yeah,
for a while, and then we could we could still do it like in a month from now to even make it more fair, and then you could give the spoiler alert.
yeah. Okay, I think if we do it in a month, then it won't be. I don't think it would be in cinemas.
It wouldn't still be
At
in
least over here,
cinemas, but
I
then
don't think it would be in cinema. At least over here, anyway. I don't know about there.
no, I don't think it would still. And again, if you give everyone a chance to turn it off for the spoilers, I mean, it's going to cost us a lot of money. It's going to cost us a lot of revenue, but for the sake of the discussion, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm interested. I'm really interested to watch it. I actually, my girlfriend and I, we watched the Batman Begins in anticipation uh, for the new film.
oh, there's a new
And the
Batman
plan
movie.
was, what's that?
Is there a new Batman movie? Oh, the
No,
Joker
just
is the
that.
new
So it's
Batman movie.
obviously, yeah, the Joker movie is obviously tied up with the Joker story is tied up with the Batman story. Even though that this new one, I think, is a lot more focused just on the Joker character. Um, but
I wonder if
yeah, I
they.
think it's important. It's important, sort of groundwork, or sort of it gives some context to the story that. And originally we were going to watch the Batman Begins, uh, and then the Dark Knight, which is the one with the starring Heath Ledger
Yes.
shortly before he died, or relatively. I think it was made. I think they made that movie maybe a year or two before he died. I think I'm thinking now it's probably going to make more sense to actually watch the Joker film and then the Dark Knight later because it's about it's the origin story of the Joker. I think is
yeah, it's
the plot
fair.
of this film.
He's one of the great characters, and I think the way that different people have tried to portray him or approached portraying him, it almost elevates the Joker as a character. It almost elevates him to like a Hamlet status, where different actors, uh, uh, that's like a milestone of their ability to take on that role.
Yes, yeah,
So,
for sure. I think Joaquin Phoenix is the actor in this.
and he's a
Just apparently
monster.
on
He's a
Showbiz.
monster.
Yeah,
Like he's a
yeah.
monster
It'll be really interesting
anyway.
to see how. Yeah, yeah. And then you've got. I guess he's got. He's following in the footsteps of some heavyweights, really, like Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson. Um, not are not to be trifled with in the sphere of showmanship and acting.
No, I think the last thing you'd want to do is to trifle with Jack Nicholson in the sphere of acting. You'd be better off making a trifle and giving it to Jack Nicholson than trifling with Jack Nicholson. And you'd still be in trouble. It would still be an uncomfortable process. And he'd look at the trifle and he'd say, "Are you trifling with me, man? What are you doing here? I feel like I'm being trifled with. I don't like being trifled with. I was the fucking Joker." Yeah.
Interesting point. It's never really that interesting when somebody says interestingly. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm going to go with it anyway. So me and Adam have been watching this History of New York documentary over the last sort of few weeks, and one of the stories that sort of arises in the history of New York is, I've forgotten the name of the writer, but there's a fellow that wrote I've forgotten the name of the writer and the book, but some fellow wrote like a myth. This fellow wrote a mythical story about, and it became a prominent seller in the days of early New York. Somebody out there will be listening and be like, I know what that story is like. Anyway, he invented that writer who invented the myth. I think he was trying to invent a kind of Grimm stories kind of mythical tale, because New Amsterdam, as New York was called at the time, I think it was still New Amsterdam at the time, had sort of lost its connection with its European heritage, or its Dutch heritage. So I think he was trying to tie it back into, give it some sort of history that it had lost in a way by being on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Anyway, that in that myth, in this story, that writer created the myth of Gotham City, actually, which was like the shadow version of New York City. It was like the shadow, which is the city where Batman and the Joker dwell.
Yes, Tom. I think you've painted a marvelous picture there of that mythology, and
So I guess the writers of Batman, or whoever the creators of Batman, sort of paid tribute to that myth and to that story.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that, because I always thought that Gotham City, because New York, if you live in America and you don't live in New York, but if you live in another city in America, they refer to New York as Gotham City, and I always thought that was like a pop culture reference to New York as being Gotham City,
okay.
But Gotham City, it was actually called Gotham City before Batman, before it was called Gotham City, like you were saying, years and years before Batman ever came into existence. So New York was actually Gotham City.
I think that's what I was getting at, Adam. So I think this famous writer of the age, the novelist of the age, he created at least penned.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find the name of the book, but
How are you doing this without moving any of your arms? I don't understand this. This is fascinating.
My fingers are on the...
Your fingers? So in the pantheon of great Batman villains, would you put Joker at number one? I think I would. And Batman villains. Who would you put at number two, and then why?
So what have we got? What do we got to work with here? There's a Riddler.
We got the
Is that the
Riddler.
Joker?
We got the
Is he a different
Joker.
character?
Oh, they're very different characters, man. Joker and the Riddler are very different characters. We got Catwoman.
Catwoman.
Oh, hang on, is it Catwoman? Yeah, Catwoman. Yeah, but I would like to discount Catwoman on her outrageous sexuality, because the original Catwoman in the TV show was played by Eartha Kitt, who is this 1950s 60s songstress, and she literally used to purr while she was singing, and she was like devilishly sexy. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. So
Yeah.
for me, I think that huh?
The villains. Well, I guess the villains are never really meant to be.
Oh, they're not meant to be fair, but I think if your villainy includes purring sexuality, and Eartha Kitt was this gorgeous black singer in the '60s, and Adam West was the guy in the grey leotard with the weird mask on. Like, it wasn't Christian Bale. He wasn't flying off buildings. He was like struggling to get out of the armchair. And then Eartha Kitt was dressed in black leather and was purring at him. And then she could break into song at any time she wanted about, she had a great Christmas album called Santa Baby. So I don't think she's in the pantheon of great Batman villains. I honestly think,
Right.
and now I tell you I tell you how good I think Batman villains are. They're so damn good. I don't even think the Penguin makes the top two, and the Penguin is an amazing character. He's an incredible character. I think that it's a two-horse race. I think it's a two-horse race between the Joker and the Riddler.
Okay.
And
Right.
and before we even get into the difference between the Joker and the Riddler, I'd like to see Joaquin Phoenix in 10 years from now do an origin biopic of the Riddler.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. That would be. That would be. That would be something to. I'd be all the riddle. Be all the riddle.
It'd be all the riddle. All right, so if we could put aside the possibility of that, what do you think is the difference between? And it doesn't have to be in the Batman universe, but what would be the difference between a Joker and a Riddler?
Yes, this is a good question. Okay, well, let's start broad, I guess, between a Joker and a Riddler. So a Joker would be somebody who's been telling a lot of jokes.
Joker would be someone who's telling a lot of jokes. Yes. And let me guess, a Riddler is someone who tells a lot of riddles.
Well, I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to take. I mean, that did come to mind, but I thought I wouldn't take that line.
Well, could we get to the heart of the Joker?
Riddles are generally puzzling, aren't they? They're complicated. They're complex. They go sort of. They're tangled. Well, they're tangled, not necessarily. Whereas jokes usually have a punchline. Well, they have a. So I've said. Well, jokes usually have a setup phase and then a. What do I feel like a joke is, really? This is my map of a joke.
Yeah.
It's basically a joke leads you down a path, or gives you a viewpoint. And it works based on a person's ideas, basically. So, for example, the joke sets you up. It says, there's two fish. There's two fish swimming. So there's the path there's the two fish. And the mind conjures up the image of the two fish. Now, what's going to happen to the two fish?
They're going to swim
one fish-
around, and they're going
Yes.
to do fish business, which, by the way, is the worst sex in the
That's what
world. Is if you're having fish sex, it's the worst sex ever. I think fish have.
Probably not if you're a fish, though. If you're a fish,
No, I think even if you're a fish,
You're a fish.
I think you intrinsically know deep down, like atavistically on a cellular level, that this is terrible sex. This is not good. Yeah, I think fish sex is the worst.
Good thing they got a short memory then.
Well, that's what they say. That's what they say. I had a kid today at the school, at the special needs school, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Morris, can you?" And I said, "That's Dr. Morris, bitch." And then no, I didn't really. He said, "Hey, can you remind my dad that the sports carnival's on tomorrow?" And I was like, "Well, why can't you remind him?" And then he said, "Oh, because I have memory problems." And then I said, "Well, how do you remember that you have memory problems?" And then he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." I was like, "All right, victory, victory."
That is good. That's a good bit of wisdom for the.
If he can remember it.
I think he will. That's the sort of.
Yeah, I think he was bullshitting
Sort
me.
of thing that.
I think he was bullshitting me and himself and his dad.
Yeah.
And his dad was bullshitting him, and through me to him, and it was just a vector of bullshit. Okay, so
one fish.
Huh?
One fish runs into the one fish.
Oh yeah.
Runs into a concrete wall.
Right.
And he turns to his friend. So at this point, we've got this is the setup. The next part's the punchline. All right. So here comes the. So we've got this image of the fish running into the wall and then turning to his friend, and we think, what? How is this? We know something's going to sort of dramatically warp our perception, or maybe some people are way ahead and they've already heard the joke, or they.
I haven't heard it. I'm dying to know. I haven't heard it. What happens?
Yeah, really drawn it out. But the one fish turns to his friend and says, "Damn."
Oh, that's brutal. It's awful. Oh. Yeah, that's intense. That's intense. Right. Okay, so what I believe the difference between the Joker and the Riddler is, Tom, when the Joker, and I'm not sure, like in my heart of hearts, I think the Joker probably wins because he's more iconic, but in my heart of hearts, so that's 3 hearts, I think the Riddler might win if it's examined truly, because the Joker
maybe your heart is a riddle to yourself.
Oh, whose isn't? Oh, Thomas, whose isn't? I think the Joker, like you were saying, he sets it up, and then but the joke is Batman. He tries to make Batman the joke, whereas I think the Riddler wants Batman to work for the riddle, and he still wants to make Batman the Joker. He wants to make Batman the fool. But I also think because he's gone to so much effort creating the riddle, that he also loves Batman, and he wants Batman to grow. Now, most of that is centered on his ego. of being the Riddler, but I think the Riddler's mischief is deeper and maybe even more well intentioned than the Joker's mischief.
And the Batman's mischief.
The Batman's mischief. Does the Batman have mischief?
I think he does. Yeah.
Does he?
I think he does. Yeah, of course. There's a bit of mischief.
Is there mischief in the Batman?
I think certainly, yeah.
What's the mischief in the Batman?
The mischief in the Batman. What is it?
I'm not saying there isn't, but I'd love to hear what
No.
you think the mischief in the Batman is.
Well, he's a very serious character, isn't he?
He's intensely serious.
Intensely serious.
He's basically an extraordinarily traumatized little boy who watched his parents get killed by the Joker. And he's gone on this.
The Joker, did the Joker kill? At least in the modern series, the Joker didn't. The Joker didn't kill his parents. In the modern, it was just a common crook.
Oh, I thought that was the Joker when he was young. When he was a common crook. I thought that was the Joker.
I think that might have been in the earlier. I think at least in the new movies, like the Christopher Nolan ones with Christian Bale starring as Batman. It's just a common crook, and he gets shot when he comes out of. So either they sort of warped the story a bit there, or it was never that way. But I think you might be right. I think but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Tom,
I don't know the mischief in Batman. I guess I just think it's fundamentally human.
Now, hang on.
Fundamentally human trait.
I need to step out for 60 seconds.
Right. I'll do 60 seconds of just.
Can you do? I feel like Johnny Carson. We need someone that can do 60 seconds. All right,
60 seconds. I'm not confident, people, but I'll give it a go.
All right, that's all we need. That's all that's required, Tom. Just a fella that can give it a go. All right, I'll be back in 60 seconds, Tom.
All right. So Adam's dog there barking. Yeah. So I guess has anyone been doing Tom's homework? Has that been a thing? People been doing that? I didn't do it. I did listen to a bit of Vampire Weekend this week, but I think it was White Sky. That was the homework last week, and I was sort of hoping that song could bridge the gap between the last podcast that I did with Adam and this one. So yeah, I guess I kind of see myself as if Adam and I are building a bridge of communication, I think I'm working on the pillars, I'd say, and Adam is probably working on the road. So the pillars need the road, and the road needs the pillars, certainly. And
roads and pillars.
Yeah. I sort of started talking about bridges.
Bridges.
Bridges, yeah.
Like the Brooklyn bridges.
The Brooklyn Bridge was a specific bridge that I was thinking of as I was talking about bridges. Yeah.
Like right now, I'm the guy that came in at the end of the show, and someone's speaking, and they'll say, "Hey, what happened?" But
no, because you didn't miss. I think there's a point. There's always a point where you can come back into a show and catch up, like on what's. There's a point where it's too much, where you can't gather what's just happened. And I think the amount of time that you just spent there and what I said, like I spoke pretty slowly for. I was like, what am I? So it's I didn't cover a whole lot of
No, but
territory.
what's interesting though, Tom, is that
Mm.
in this instance, you get to ask the show what you missed out on,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes the show.
Yes.
I think
Well,
I think the Riddler would appreciate that. And then
yeah.
he'd
Many riddles.
he'd spin his cane, and then he'd do something weird with his hat, and then, well, I don't know what would happen next. I'm not the Riddler. So, Tom, we did promise we're coming to the end of Talking Wild Madness episode 15, or it might be 16. I've lost count, but
That's great.
oh, it's very good. But I posted a pre-show promo on LinkedIn today, and I said we were going to talk about the Irish mob, Manhattan, I think the myth of Manhattan, the Irish mob. I think I sent you a copy of it. Do you remember the other two? There was four things we were going to talk about. I mean, it wasn't like a brief. It wasn't like a brief or anything. So it wasn't like I was expecting you to read it. You sent me that job opportunity offer you got in German, which I really enjoyed reading. Okay, so
New York values.
New York values.
And the Irish mob.
Okay, New York values, Mystique, Manhattan, and the Irish mob. Okay, so just so we are keeping our promises to our LinkedIn audience. All right, can give me let's just do 1 minute on each. What do you think New York values are?
Sorry, can you just cut out there?
Oh, sorry. New York values. What do you think a New York value is?
Let's say money or commercial.
I'd absolutely agree. I was going to say capitalism.
Capitalism, yeah.
Capitalism.
But capitalism, probably diversity would probably be.
Oh, definitely. Oh, they're the diversity kings. The only thing I would add is fluidity. In that documentary, there was they have these amazing dudes. They have these amazing old guys, and it just like at the bottom of the screen it says historian or author, or it may as well say absolute lunatic at the bottom of the screen.
And it was actually really nice when the first episode that I watched, because it was just on YouTube. The titles, the names of the titles were just cut off. We just see the top half of the name.
Oh, okay.
And I actually quite enjoyed it because it really just took out it just made it very ambiguous. Like you had no idea who this person that was talking was. And I guess that's probably how it is on the streets of New York.
Oh, nice, Tom. Yeah, nice. Well, you're lucky because the names are so bizarre. It's like Thurman Morstan, author. It's like Zabit McCoskin, who's going to be writing into the show in 3 decades. And one of the great things he said was, New York never is. It's always becoming something else.
Yeah.
Which I thought was beautiful. So that's what I thought, the fluidity. All right, Mystique, and this might tie into the Riddler a little bit. What are your thoughts on Mystique?
Mystique, I see. Well, Mystique is a kind of a dichotomy of shiny objects in mirrors and smoke. I think
shiny objects in mirrors and smoke. Tom, we'll take it. We will take it. We'll write it down. Shiny objects and mirrors and smoke. Okay. Manhattan. Give us 60 seconds on Manhattan, and it could be Manhattan, or it could be Manhattan.
I think Manhattan is a very dense concrete jungle as it exists today. It hasn't been that way. It's been before that. It was an island, probably a bit of a natural paradise. So it's very well. It's in a very good setting for ships to dock and harbour there. It probably won't exist in its current form. Well, certainly not forever. Everything sort of comes and goes.
I like that thing that you said from when it was in the first episode, and they were talking about the Indians selling to the Dutch for, it was like $60 or whatever it was.
60 guilders, I think.
60 guilders, thank you. 60 guilders and a handful of seashells. And then it was this idea of it was so preposterous for the native Indians to sell land, so it was just ridiculous. But then there was also that phrase of and there was a deep black man doing the voiceover, and he said in his best Abraham Lincoln chains freshly off his wrist voice, and the Indians thought it was temporary. And watching it from my perspective, from a safe white distance in time and space, I was like, oh, those Indians, how could they possibly think it was temporary? But then you said New York is temporary.
Well, maybe I thought maybe.
No. You said New York is temporary, and it is. It absolutely is. And you're touching a bit on that. You're touching a bit on that now. Is that New York will suffer the unknowing death, just like every human being will suffer the unknowing death. New York won't be around for infinity. New York will die the same way the 4-year-old child in the Precious Family will die. The same way you and I will die. New York will die equally. And the only difference maybe is that New York won't know when it's dead. That'll be the tragedy. Whereas you and I, or the 4-year-old child, will know when we're dead, or the people that stick around after and have to bury us, they'll know that we're dead. But maybe New York will die. Oh, Tom's holding his hands up. Tom's holding his hands up. But maybe New York will die without knowing it. Maybe it'll pass and no one will know. So the last one was the Irish mob, Tom. Give us 60 seconds on the Irish mob. What do you got?
That's it. You just summed it up.
What do you mean I just summed it up? You got to give us 60 seconds on the Irish mob, Tom.
What do you got?
What do you got? Oh, what do you got?